Did you want to do your laptop up there, Mike? Know who your people are? Come on down. All right. So he's gonna go up there and talk. So as soon as we do this, I'll get.
Couple of minutes after 6 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. We'll call the Johnston City Council work session number 23-05 to order. Sam, roll call, please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Cope,
Here.
Burkhart,
Here.
Evans.
Here.
We have one item on the agenda this evening, and that is to review and discuss the proposed FY24 budget. Mike?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Including the packet, originally we had a discussion item that was prepared, memo was prepared, that talked about 6 different changes that were being suggested for possibilities. And I know we'll have some discussions about each of those. But if selected, those 6 changes would result in a tax levy of 10.85513. Which I know, talking with some, but not all of the council, that was a number that seemed palatable as a discussion point or starting point. So I think for purposes of tonight, there's been a request to kind of run through all of the decision packages. I'm going to go through some of them very quickly, just for sake of time, because just the number of them. But as I go through them, if someone wants to pause, just speak up, or if they want to speak on one of those, we'd be happy to do that. So starting at the top, first decision package was to add a full-time police officer. Second decision package would be for the city of Johnston to add 2 firefighter medics. Grimes would also, and we have confirmed they have added 1 in their budget for a total of 3. Questions on that? In community development, this is one of the items that we've been having a lot of discussion on, is the neighborhood development position. It is recommended in the budget at this point to be a full 1-year position. Now the number that's in there is a net number, because we do get some revenue for the position off rental. So that is a net number, that cost increase.
Mike, can I pause you on that one if possible? How did we, I mean, can I see which document has that net number versus the overall expenditure of that?
You would have to go back and look at the decision package document. See if I can pull that up quick. Testing my ability to go through board docs efficiently. What is that in the library?
While he's looking for that, I would note that the rental housing program already has revenue coming in. This is anticipated to be additional revenue that would be generated by a restructuring of our fee schedule to make sure that we're covering the full cost. So the full cost would be covered by the rental housing revenue. It's just not all of that is new revenue. Some of that's existing revenue.
I was very close.
David, I missed that. So not all of this would be new revenue?
The, the dollar amount shown would be the additional property taxes necessary to cover. So the additional revenue is estimated to be just under 25,000. Our total revenue off of memory for the rental housing program is somewhere between 60 and 75,000 a year.
So this sheet here, Councilman Burkhart shows the additional revenue or property tax, or excuse me, additional revenue from the rental housing inspection. That's the increase in fees. And then below that is the costs of the salary and different benefits. So it nets out to be 69,370,620.
Thank you.
The recommendation is that is left in for the full year. Questions on that?
So that position doesn't pay for itself.
Not 100%, no. Or if you think about what the position does, some of it's doing code compliance issues.
Yep.
There are some of those things that are really just not costs that you can pass back to like rental housing or other inspection activities. So naturally, there's going to be some of those costs that are going to have to be paid for by the taxpayers.
Clarify, the building department in its brings in more revenue than we're spending for all of our staff, including this position. It's just that goes back to the general fund.
Right. So is the only person that's going to be able to do these inspections this person? Or if we have a complaint and somebody needs to go out, he's already got a list of stuff to do. Does anybody on staff have the qualifications to go out?
Currently, our two building inspectors and our building official are doing this. The issue is all of it, code enforcement and rental housing comes second to our normal daily inspections for all the other buildings. There's a lag partly because of COVID, we're 2 years behind on keeping up with rental inspections and code. Since COVID has been a much greater need than it's ever been in life.
Thank you.
Welcome. Thank you. Other questions on that? Moving on, item 4 again is the park superintendent. This is net neutral to the budget itself, but it is shifting a crew supervisor to the park superintendent role. We currently have a crew supervisor that's now vacant. We would promote a park maintenance person into that crew leader position, and then we would backfill. But because of the wages and where people are on steps, it all ends up being net neutral in the upcoming budget. Questions on that? Police department is replacing on item 5 is the in-car camera system replacement. Item 6 and 7 are maintenance worker positions. 6 is in the wastewater department. Number 7 is in the public works department. Number 8 is
Mike, sorry, quick question. What's the difference between 6 and 7? What does that role maintenance worker make in each of those?
so the maintenance worker in the water wastewater. I mean, they're going to be doing utility work that's funded out of the utility funds. There's no impact to the general levy on those positions. The position out of public works, they'll be doing street repair, snow plowing. And again, that will come out of your road use tax fund. So no impact to the general levy.
Very good. Okay.
Mike, one thing I would sort of ask, each of these different items, the maintenance worker, the park superintendent, neighborhood development, they all are kind of part of different agencies of the city government.
it's hard for us to kind of put in context when you add one staffer without having an overall picture of where these people fit, which goes back to a request I made several months ago for organizational charts for each of the different departments to sort of see where we fit in each of the different departments. So just want to remind that I think it'd be helpful for us. We completely lose context. I have no idea when the last time we added a maintenance worker to each of these departments, because this document provides zero context going forward. So just from a standpoint of, I think that would be helpful for us would be to, one, have multi-year context about what we're doing in the budget and not just looking at it from year to year. And two, organizational charts for each department. So we see, if, this is going to be, we have 4 maintenance workers in wastewater, water treatment, or where exactly we are. So those are things that would be helpful out of this process that I would ask you to work on, or have the staff work on.
Thank you. Any other questions on the maintenance workers? Number 8 was the phase 2 of the part-time wage increases in the library. As you recall, we're having retention issues with some staff, just with the low wages that we're paying. I mean, McDonald's pays more. Decision package number 9 was in the police department, was adding a part-time administrative assistant position. Volume of requests we're receiving.
Is that the same position the fire and the police share?
Say that again.
That the position you're talking about, part-time administrative assistant, is that the position shared with police and the fire?
No, this is just exclusively within the police department. And it's a part-time position.
Okay. Did we not hear something about the sharing the resources about it?
We didn't look at share. There was a request that ultimately was not forwarded. It was not a recommended item to be funded in the fire department.
Mike, if I can interject here, in the last budget year, we had a decision package for a full-time public safety support specialist position. That position is shared between police and fire. That's our technology between public safety departments.
Okay, thank you.
And Chief, that was funded last year?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so it was a decision package that we did fund.
What we did is we had a retirement of an officer in the sworn position, so we transitioned that position to civilian. So it was a decision package and we kept the sworn position.
Any other questions on
Yeah,
that?
that's fine, thank you.
Moving on then, number 10, in the Parks Department. This is the development of a master trail plan. The timing of this is somewhat important with the new code that's coming online. We have a requirement that if a trail is shown on the master plan, then the developer would be responsible for installing that as part of the infrastructure like they would water, streets. So going through this process, we think is a timely item. So that was number 10. Any questions?
Where is that one in the decision package document? Do we have a page number on that one? Oh, I found it. It's page 68. So it shows the funding of that. It's 130,000. And we're funding that partially out of TIF and partially out of loss. Is that correct?
Correct.
Half and half. Is that the plan?
Correct. And the logic is there'll be some trail where some of this project will occur within a TIF district, and some of this is going to occur outside a TIF district. And so we need the multiple funding sources fund the overall project because of that split. Now, is there anything magical about that split? No, I think staff just looked at what we felt comfortable that we could justify if we ever were audited.
And then does that TIF come sort of out of different TIF district funds?
It will. Yep.
Because we don't have like an overall general, every TIF district fund is allocated into a different TIF district, right? There's
Correct.
not kind of a, okay.
Mike, I'd ask you to hold that thought on that explanation when we get down a couple more, because it is not a half and half.
Okay.
moving forward. So I'll need a little more defense on that one.
Okay. Any other questions on the master trail plan? Number 11, True North Ease Benefit Enrollment Program. This is just really a software package to kind of make the administrative processes of open enrollment and just even new hires, kind of streamline that, which is the number of employees we have. This is split between general fund and other utility funds, just based on the number of employee counts we have within like road use tax and the questions on that.
Mike, I do, and I know it's splitting hairs here, but quite frankly, I feel like that's what today is for. I know that we have full-time positions that we're paying out of TIF as it stands right now, just like we have full-time positions that are being paid out of road use and water. Is there any consideration of splitting that True North benefit to include the fractional that would be those two full-time positions that are being paid out of our TIF?
Do their wages and benefits for those.
Mhm.
So it is partially, but it's for two employees, I guess it would be a little bit, but I guess it wasn't enough, I guess, for us to put in there, but we certainly can do that.
Okay. I'm looking for any reason here in any way here to reduce this.
And we're probably talking $200.
Okay.
I mean, we have about 150 employees, 15,000.
How many, I know you gave us a breakdown recently of union versus non-union. Do we have any kind of numbers as to how many employees get paid out of our road use tax and how many get paid out of our water specific, just so I could get that in my mind out of the 150?
That number, we don't,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
A lot of them are partially paid out of multiple funds too, so.
Okay.
So you don't have, there's some that are road use, part general fund, so there's.
Okay. All right.
I mean, even take my position. My position's broke up 70% general fund, 15% water, 15% sewer.
Okay.
But we do have some variations even in that.
All right, thanks.
Other questions on? Not moving on. Number 12 is the streetscape master plan. And then you were asking specifically Councilmember Burkhart why that division. I'm going to look back if we had any.
And Matt was just saying, because I can't see that far, you're saying the streetscape master plan, we had 50,000 out of lost, 75,000 out of TIF, or vice versa?
Vice versa.
And 50,000 out of TIF. I suppose it was a matter of trying to determine, we're gonna have one, 4, 5, and a new TIF district are only the only TIF districts that are going to be left active until we get until we finish TIF 2. So we're trying to probably think of like Merle Hay is one, West Central, which is out on 70th, is another one that's live, and then 100th Street. And so until Adam gets the amendment done for 86th Street, or we don't have Pioneer, any of that area anymore, that's going to be left in a TIF district. So we were, I guess, looking at the map and just trying to guess about where we were going to be with what area. So whatever area, whenever we get the contract with the engineer, this is what they've done for us before, is whatever areas within a TIF district, they actually break it out in phases for me. So I know which district is 1, 2, or 3, and then that's how we bill it. So for budgeting purposes, we just kind of are assuming that I have about 3 live districts. And as far as a streetscape plan for out north, which we don't have a plan for yet. So it was just kind of our best guess estimate, in all honesty, Brian.
Okay. I would have then believed that would have been the same justification used for the master trails division and not gone 50-50, is there some compelling reason why we didn't use that same breakout on master trails?
I don't, not that I know of, no.
Okay.
Where is in our decision package document, 142 pages, where is the streetscape on that?
It's under page 113.
Yes, 113.
Where did we get that amount? I know that under the trails, it was quoted from Foth. I don't see Foth or another engineer referenced in that. Is it somewhere listed in the attachment that follows the decision package and I missed it?
We did get a quote from an engineer. You can see some of the graphics that they had submitted. I'd have to go back and see. So Genus there that provided some of that streetscape planning documents did provide a number, which is
Okay.
what we put in the request. But
How did they deliver that number to us? Just out of curiosity. Was that a letter, a memo?
I'd have to go back and take a look through emails, but I think I gave them some direction based on what we were looking for, based on some discussion at the Public Works Ad Hoc Committee and some council discussion, gave that information to them and they gave us a quote.
Okay. Where did this, help remind me where within our strategic planning we discussed this or which group discussed this?
It was in our infrastructure group.
Okay.
It was in one of the top 5 priorities that was in the infrastructure group.
For now.
So to me, as I look at this, the streetscape, I sort of look at three of the kind of studies that we have overall, and I don't mean to jump around in your ordering, but you have the trail plan, the streetscape, and the aquatic study, to me, are 3 kind of studies that I think you can kind of throw together and I think kind of look at, okay, how do you prioritize those, right? And you provided on the trail plan, I think, a pretty good rationale for that, and that we are implementing a pretty significant policy change to require a trail if it's in the master trail plan. So you need a master trail plan as part of that. So that's legitimate. I accept that. I think that's a legitimate reason. What is kind of the rationale of backing up the streetscape for doing it this year as opposed to doing it in the future or doing it at $125,000 level?
I think it's just feedback we've had from the Public Works Ad Hoc Committee and just discussions we've had. Now, certainly, we would look for policy direction and from the council on what you guys feel is the higher priority. And that's what we're seeking tonight.
I mean, to me, then you have the pool study, which if you look at, for instance, our community survey was referenced throughout, any open-ended question you asked the citizens. There was pool was right. And I don't think we need to go back and count each time, but I think we would all acknowledge if you went back and looked at it, it was referenced. Now, I'm somebody who has quite openly, at least in different committee meetings, expressed concerns about the feasibility of the pool. But I also think that we need to have, in essence, if we're going to say why we haven't moved forward on a pool, I think we need to have data to back that up. And I think we sorely are lacking that at this point. And so to me, a feasibility study around the pool is really important because it I think I think you could do a feasibility study in almost two parts. The first part really is sort of looking at the economic feasibility of your ability to recruit labor and also cost. You know, what's the financial implications for the city? And then how that kind of comes back, I think then drives a determination of whether you then decide whether to pursue part two of the study or not. And part two would then focus on potential location and scope of it and all those kind of things. And in the decision package on the pool study, it quotes a range of prices as 30 to 50,000. And that's looking at all elements of the study. So I would like us to find a way to, because it currently isn't in the documents that we have in front of us tonight, a way to fund that aquatic study. If not, and narrow the scope of it into that, to focus on the economic feasibility at a two-part, that'd be the approach I would suggest, and that I think would lower the cost. And I'd like to find a way to do that. And if that means we need to reduce some funding that we're doing for the master streetscape planning, I think we should take that approach. And so I just kind of throw that out as a.
So a couple thoughts, because it's this question, kind of how you proposed came up today. I think, first of all, I think if you want to fund the pool study, there is a way to do it. Certainly, originally we had suggested that you could pay it out of local option sales tax, and that's still an option the council can avail themselves of. Right, wrong, or indifferent, you know, staff had some discussions with a few council members, and you know, the sense we were getting was there wasn't going to be enough support for the pool, so that's why the suggestion was made, and why we need more dialogue on that tonight too. I think on the feasibility, so I think we just need direction. If the council wants to go forward with the pool study, that certainly can happen. On the feasibility, I think the cautionary note is, and you know, we could look at just a feasibility, but what are you looking at a feasibility of? Because a splash pad can be very feasible to do because there's no staff, there's no cost. A super pool where it takes 40 staff to staff it and run it, and at a really high extreme price tag isn't what probably the community wants, nor is it feasible without even doing any work. So I think there's going to need to be a step where you have a discussion with the community on design, on what the elements you want. Doesn't need to go in and figure out where the drains are or even a location, but we do need to have some basic work on the design so that you know what we're trying to do a feasibility study on. And maybe there's a pool out there in the community that we already know that can help shortchange some of that work. But some design, some community input is probably needed. Otherwise, I think the fear would be you're going to get a reaction of, well, you didn't study the right thing. You didn't find out the right questions. So I think there's kind of this chicken and egg thing that I think we need to work through on the design component.
So basically, I mean, we can figure out the scope of the study, but
Yeah.
what you're saying is somewhere we can find the funding to put it back in the budget.
I think there's ways you can do it, but I think
What are you, can you be more specific, or?
I don't know right now, Tommy. I think that's some of the discussions we're gonna have to talk with, like Burbach or Water's Edge, these consultants that do it, and just, you know, kind of talk through and figure out a scope that they feel comfortable with, that is also going to get a product that's going to be useful to us.
But Mike, you think that can be done within the $50,000 that we're talking about here?
Yeah.
And what was proposed previously, and what we would probably have some discussion around tonight is whether or not we find that $50,000 in lost.
Correct. And the other thing is, all these studies that we're talking about, you know, the 50,000 for this, the master plan, that's 130,000, the streetscape, that's 125,000. Each of those are ranges. At the end of the day, we're going to go out and do RFPs, RFQs. We're gonna engage a number of different consultants, and then we'll get a proposal brought forward to the council that will have a definitive number. So these are just budget numbers right now.
Yeah, so I guess I would like to be an advocate for finding the funding to do the pool study, and to me, that's a higher priority than the streets.
Yeah.
Based on what response we've received from the community of interest in the pool. Now, at the end of the day, we can find money to fund all three. We don't really need to engage in a priorities discussion, and I'm fine with not engaging in that priority discussion as long as my priorities get funded. But I think that's,
Yeah.
and again, and I think this is helpful so we all understand it. I don't come from this as somebody who believes we should build a pool now. In fact, my biggest fear, I've shared this with some people, is that somebody walks in the door and hands us a check that pays for a pool, and then we've got to operate the freaking thing.
Exactly.
I mean, that would make me really nervous. So.
A free pool's not free.
Exactly.
So,
Sorry.
well, I would like to put a counterpoint to Councilman Cope's. My priority is the streetscape, and second would be the trails. Not that I don't value the swimming pool study. I feel like sometimes we're trying to save these pennies and we're gonna be losing dollars in the future because we're gonna be regretting that we didn't have plans and know where we're going. You can't build a city without knowing where you're gonna go. And the thing about the streetscape, it might mean just, somebody might say, oh, it's just where the trees are located. Not quite. I mean, we have a lot of things that go within the easements, and planning ahead for where the trees are going to be allowed, along with light poles, the water hookups, et cetera. It's complicated, and we've been putting it off. And if you go drive up and down Merle Hay Road, we've lost all the ash trees in front of the dentist's office. The crabapple trees in front of Hy-Vee are gone. We've cut down all those trees, well, not all but a handful of trees on the corner of Johnston Drive and Merle Hay Road. And so maybe people didn't put pool in their survey. I've heard a lot about tree removals overall. And I've always said to them, we're gonna fix it. We're gonna turn it around. We're gonna make this beautiful connection between the interstate and our beautiful city hall. But we need to know where we're going. So trying to keep this short, my priority is the streetscape and the trails, because I feel like we'll short ourselves in the end if we do not fund them.
Councilman Reddy?
Yes, I was concerning about the pool, the aquatic study things. So I did talk to a few people up in Urbandale City Council as well. They had a swimming pool. And talking to them, they said, it's a bottomless pit. It's just not maintainable. Aquatic pool is something that they said is not a feasible thing. So my priority could be not to have aquatic pool study at this point in time at all. Maybe sometime later in the future somewhere, but at this point, considering all that we have, I really don't think we need to do that at all. The aquatic pool.
Maybe if I can weigh in here on a couple of the studies. I've become convinced that it makes sense at this time to go forward and do the pool study. As Councilman Burkhart has said, we hear about it every time we do the community survey. And yes, that's what you would expect parents with children to say in a survey. They aren't going to say, we want a streetscape plan. They're just not going to say that. They're going to say, we want a pool. That makes sense. I think that, as Mike and I were discussing it today, I think a study that looks at not just a specific proposal or design, but what this community might be able to support as a water recreation facility in our community. It could be more than one. It may not be a pool. It may not be a water park, but it may be several different things located throughout our community that addresses the needs of our families for water recreation, for the families. So I think it makes sense at this time to do that, but look at not just one option, Don't limit ourselves to just one design, one option, because one of the things that I fear is if we create this, this beautiful design around this wonderful water park, we're going to get our community excited about what they see, and we're not going to be able to afford it. We're not going to be able to afford building it. We're not going to be able to afford operating it, and we may not even have a place to put it. So
We
I
probably wouldn't even get the support in a bond referendum. to
I-
fund it.
that-
I mean,
you know,
that would be.
that's part of
other.
that's part of the issue. Absolutely. So I think we need to do a study, but I think we need to study options and see if we can find one or more that makes sense for our community.
Please keep going.
Let me add to the discussion around the streetscape study. I agree completely with Councilwoman Martin. It is something that we've discussed for many, many years. It's not just beautification. It is economic development. We are spending an incredible amount of time and resources improving what's going on along Merle Hay Road and trying to improve what's going to happen on 86th Street. And to the extent that we can design the roads and the sidewalks and everything else, the infrastructure around what we're trying to do with that economic development, it only will attract more economic development. Councilwoman Martin is absolutely right. If we don't plan for that now, we are really limiting what we can do in the future. Because the development or redevelopment is going to occur. And then once that infrastructure is in place, those structures in place, then you can't do some of the things that you might have wanted to do if you'd have just planned for it. So I think now is the time to do the streetscape planning as we are, continuing to redevelop Merle Hay Road, 86th Street, and trying to get more economic development in our community. Councilman Burkhart.
For the sake of time, let's continue through or if we can, Mayor, the decision packages. You know where I stand on a pool study. And certainly I had no concerns with lumping those other planning into one-time expenses of loss as well. So I kind of want to hear everything before we get too straight.
Is everybody else ready to move on? Councilman Evans?
So I'm going to jump in because I kind of stirred this up a week and a half ago regarding streetscape, the trails, and the pool. And now, basically what it did was it educated me. I initially thought that the streetscape thing, oh my God, was nothing but a pretty picture. And that we were going out and I was, reached out to the dean at Iowa State to get some students involved to make a pretty picture. And then on the trails thing, it was like, are we just putting lines on a piece of paper on undeveloped ground and telling a developer where he's got to put them? No, we're actually saying we have a trailhead here, a trailhead here. We need those connected through the development, and Mr. Developer, you will be required to do that. Nobody's dumb. You all know we're sitting on a big piece of ground that will be being developed someday. And as a future development person, partner, whatever, having those two things in front of me, knowing what the city is expecting streetwise, whether it's the infrastructure, the look, the amount of curb and gutter, whatever, the width of the driveways, the angle, all of that with the trails plan, and maybe they can be combined one and the same, but having those tools as a developer, to me, is huge. Very, very helpful. On the pool, I was a hard no 2 weeks ago. And I didn't know what to do. And again, I reached out and I got some education and I understand where we're coming from now. And I love the idea. And I can picture having a splash pad here and a splash pad there, or having a water feature, even at Terra Park, or not, is it Terra Park? There's something there where it squirts water over the kids. Maybe it's not a splash pad, maybe it's just a water feature. Maybe it's not a pool. I'm close to retirement and I would love to have a lazy river, but I don't know where, and so anyway, I was 2 weeks ago trying very hard to eliminate those three things. Trying very hard to keep the levy down. And I'm in a whole different world now. I support the three. But I also, I want to hear what the rest you have to say. So thank you.
Are we ready to move on? Mike,
Keep moving on. Fire Department, decision package number 13 is paramedic school expenses. This would allow 3 paramedics or EMTs become paramedics for schooling. Decision pack 14 is adding some technology to the storm sirens. Number 15 in the police department is upgrading, going from the last Metro Police Department to be all on paper to going to a document management system. Number 16 is adding automatic transfer switch to our generator. 17 in public works. Parking lot. And both 16 and 17 come out of road use tax fund. Number 18 is in the water wastewater, via wastewater device, sewer push camera out of the utility funds. Number 19 in the water department would be a field programmer for the water meters that come out of the utility fund. Number 20 is to reclassify the division commander positions to captains. That is a levy general fund expense. The recommendation at this point is to delay it 1 year would be the high priority for next fiscal year. Now, as you know, and we'll talk about in a little bit, is we do have some implementation dollars for the classification compensation work that's underway right now. We expect to have that back late summer, early fall of this year. And as we get those and those funds that originally what was 2%, we're looking at a 0.5%. Those apply to any position within the city, union, non-union. As we get those results back, then we would be able to have a pool of funds that we can bring up the positions that are most out of line with the market. And we would certainly look at them, treat them as captains for the purposes of that, and then would make adjustments based on that. So it kind of brings everyone kind of an equal viewing point at that point.
Mike, I want to pause for just a second on that topic. I just want to make sure that we are all clear, or at least that I am, that as I interpret the spreadsheet that was provided as part of all of the information, that $30,000 results in a tax, or if it were to be included, a tax levy increase of 1.862 cents. Is that correct?
That would be correct.
Okay. Less than 2 cents.
Any other questions on that? Number 21 is the ClearGov financial software. 22.
I'm sorry, can we just go back to the captain's item real quick? Chief, are those union or non-union positions?
They're non-union.
Non-union, okay, thanks.
So 21 was ClearGov. Questions on that?
Mike, on that ClearGov, there is no portion that's an initial startup that would be attributable to lost.
No,
Okay.
I don't believe so.
And that 36.4 is a single ongoing, but that is the annual, that would be the annual cost. Do we anticipate moving forward annually that we would be able to split those expenses as described now in the future? Okay.
Talked about the aquatic center, so I'm going to skip that for now. Number 23 is to add additional funds for trees purchases, so just increasing the by 13,000. And then decision package number 24, which originally came out of the HR Finance Committee, was to add a 2% compensation study implementation pool. Again, this would be citywide. At 2%, it's $170,000. The recommendation right now is 42,500 or a half. Certainly, as we receive the results of the compensation work back this fall, I think part of the detail, part of the work in the end will be how do we implement it? I think as implementation should be known, I mean, it's good to have dollars set aside to start the implementation, but it will be a long term. And I think the key will be to develop that plan and then communicate it out to employees and how the council.
Mike, can we bump back up to priority 23 on the trees? That was the recommendation from staff is not to include that. Is that correct?
At one point, that was a recommendation, but the council gave us direction during one of our earlier discussions to include it. So it is included in there.
Okay. Then the follow-up question to that is, while I like trees, and it isn't, I'm not just saying that because I'm sitting next to Councilmember Martin, and it isn't because I've watched the Lorax lately. It's more from the standpoint of, is there any rationale as to why Lost was not considered for that increase so that we could at least, as times or as resources prevail, we can add those trees, but at least we keep our bare minimum in place? In other words, was there an explanation as to why it had to come from the general fund? Is there some restriction?
There's no restriction. Council certainly has the ability to. Our referendum says parks, right? You can do, yep. So you can use lost funds. The cautionary note, just our philosophy as we were putting this together, my philosophy was, if it's an ongoing expense, it's coming out of the general fund. If it's a one-time expense, it's coming out of lost. So certainly if the council wants to take a different direction, you certainly have that ability.
Isn't this funded out of hotel motel revenue? I thought when we had that discussion that this, isn't there a part of, wasn't this kind of part of the, as I remember the discussion, it was like we had money unspent, an unspent balance in a fund that we used for parks or rec. And that's where we were taking this 13,000 from. It wasn't a general.
Take money out of hotel motel tax for traveling, but not for trees. It's always historically came from the general fund.
Okay, for some reason, I thought that when we had the conversation, it was I mean, I'm comfortable with how it is here, but.
The Emerald Passport came out of lost.
Right, but that's a short term.
Yeah, I didn't know if that's a fair thing.
No.
Teresa, just, can you remind me though, is our hotel motel balance, does any balance accrue, or do we roll all of that into trail maintenance specifically?
Oh, we accrue some in there, but it, whatever we get in hotel motel tax money, you know, we have to give 2/7 to, and then we keep a certain percentage. And then that stays with us. I'm projecting that at the end of 23-24, next year's budget, we'd have a balance of $100,000 in hotel motel tax.
Okay.
But those are unrestricted funds, right? After you do the 2/7 for Convention and Visitors Bureau and Bravo, then those remaining funds are unrestricted. Is that correct?
Cindy, didn't we look up that? We looked up that code. 50% had to be for for tourists and so we're
Yeah.
doing that, I think. I think, historically, we always wanted to kind of increase that amount of money towards the park and trail improvement to improve the trails because we just keep getting more trails. We haven't improved that amount that we've transferred from hotel motel tax for a really, really long time. And we used to, in fact, we tried for a few years, we were able, back when we had a few more hotels. And we were able to transfer the amount that we already transferred from the general fund to trail maintenance and the hotel motel tax, which totals about $156,000 each year towards trail maintenance. Right now, you're transferring 81,000 from hotel motel tax and you're transferring 76 or 74,000 from the general fund already to trail maintenance. So just depends on how you want to shift the dollars around. Yes. Any lawful use, I guess. Okay, Cindy just looked it up, so we could.
So for the sake of time,
Have you had priority 24?
what,
Did you describe priority 24?
yes.
Oh, okay. Must have missed it in my thoughts.
I can talk about it again if you.
No, he did talk about it. I
Yep.
haven't heard it.
Even.
So
I'm not sure was there a final recommendation on number 24?
Let me talk where I think, what I'm gonna recommend based on kind of the discussion tonight and the discussion we had. And certainly I'm throwing it out for discussion and, but we would, the 6 items that were included and actually it was a discussion or a council member wanted a little bit of information on the transfer. So one of the things that changed from 2 weeks ago to today is we've received our property and liability insurance and it went up substantially, more than what we were budgeting. And that is the impact and the need for us from our local option sales tax to the general fund. Now, we've always had the equipment reserve fund in the general fund. And so we're looking to supplement that. And then we just would not do the same transfer we do from general fund to that equipment reserve fund. Otherwise, we're not going to hit the 25% reserve balance that we'd want at the end of the fiscal year. So that is where that item came from.
And by that, Mike, you mean all of the attributable CEP expenses that were listed in your memo?
Correct.
Not all of them, excuse me, a portion of, in the staff report, I listed the amount for police, amount for fire, and a portion of the parks. It's not all of them. We'll be using, we'll be using additional, if I heard your question right.
Good clarification. So not all the capital equipment, but those items, yes. Thank you for that clarification.
Can I ask how much of an increase, either percentage wise and actually in real dollars, what are we seeing as far as an increase in that insurance increase?
Real dollars, we're seeing an increase of $275,055 for next year's premium. So currently we had budgeted $339,380. And the issue for us, of course, is that we're always budgeting so far ahead of time. That $339 that was budgeted for the FY24 was based on the premium for FY22. Or excuse me, the premium for our 23-24 year, which is always April through March, is budgeted a whole year ahead, and it's based on the year before that's premium. So like we just received our dividend for our 2021-22 policy year. So that's how far it kind of goes behind. So in reality, the increase of our premium from 22 to 23 to 23-24 was $85,587. The problem is we had only budgeted based on our premium for our 2021 budget when we did our 22-23 budget. And so we're kind of behind, obviously, as we have grown in exposures, and our premium last year and then now this year has gone up significantly because of the number of natural disasters we had in Iowa and basically what it has done to the insurance market overall. So we did get a couple quotes. We've told them, or they got a couple rough quotes. We told them specifically we want handwritten quotes for next year if we can find some carriers that will cover municipal governments.
So I'm quickly trying to do some math here, and I see that those three items or those three amounts that you're indicating, that $500,000 from lost, doesn't seem to equal though the amount of the increase that you just received in your premium. Please justify why $500,000 when I thought I heard you say that we got a less than $500,000 premium increase. Even
Because I lowered I remember projected a tax rate of almost 1105, right? And I got the strong indication 2 weeks ago that that wasn't going to fly. So I had to lower revenues and I raised in expenses. So when you
Okay.
do both, that affects a percentage.
Okay. So is it safe to say that our proposed levy increase is in part due to these insurance premiums?
In part, yes.
I would I think it might be a hair of a stretch to say that our increase is based because of insurance premium increases.
Okay.
It might be partially because of that, but there were a lot of expenses that increased last year, and there've been a lot of years where we've used over $1 million worth of reserve. That is justifying why a property tax increase is necessary.
Okay, thank you.
Well, but obviously too, the reduction, losing $43 million in taxable valuation halfway through the
Absolutely.
budget process.
Absolutely.
Significant factor too. I mean, but I do think it's important because there is a narrative going around that the only reason the levy increases, and this is not Johnston specific, but it's just sort of around advocacy groups at the Capitol and others, is because local governments can't control spending.
Right.
But we have zero control over insurance premiums, zero control. And it's not just on property casualty, I'm sure it's in health and there's other items too. So it would be helpful as we kind of, pull together those types of things, being able to identify those types of things that are out of our control. Because we're getting beat up at the Capitol by folks who don't really care about the truth. And I think it's important for us to be able to point out that there's a lot of other items out there that need to be understood. And we're just doing a poor
Zero
job of it.
control on the utility costs that everyone's paying increases on, just like we are. Gas costs, there's just so many. That's why it's so hard to say one reason, Brian.
And Teresa, I wasn't at all trying to set you up in a gotcha or to put you in a difficult situation with regard to that. Councilmember Cope is anticipated exactly where I was going with that foundational question from the standpoint of we had multiple factors that have weighed into why our levy is increasing, including, in my opinion, trying to maintain a high quality level of service to the residents of Johnston. And I feel like they're getting it now. They deserve it for the future, as well as all of the staff here deserve to continue to have living wages and competitive wages to be able to provide that outstanding service to us. I also feel, and I may be a minority in this, that the reality is that we also put some undue burden on you to have to make some of these decisions by some folks who couldn't stomach a higher levy, and so kind of forced you to make these decisions. I frankly felt very comfortable where we were 2 weeks ago. Others did not. And that's why we're here. And that's why, with a fine tooth comb, I want to go through every decision package to make sure that everyone hears and hopefully everyone understands what this means, and that we are trying to exhaust every last point of funding as to where that could come from besides even a general fund levy. So thank you.
We note it's 7:02. So.
I think we've had discussion tonight. We didn't intend to make any decisions tonight. I think folks have had some opportunity to share their views. We weren't going to come to any conclusions, so I think we've accomplished what we can accomplish.
Well, I would like to suggest we revisit this discussion at the end of the council meeting, because I don't feel comfortable walking away from this work session without providing greater direction from staff that we all have an understanding of. I think we really struggled at their last meeting when we did that, and I would be strongly opposed to doing that again tonight.
And
so
I hear your request, and we can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Appreciate that very much.
thank you all.
We will adjourn the work session.